Hi, I'm Victoria. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to be doing my January wrap-up. I read 9 books in the month of January, although one of them is kind of a secret, so we're only going to be talking about 8. I'd say it's generally kind of the middle ground of what I typically do. Now, starting off, the first book I read this year is City of the Falling Sky by Joseph Evans. This is the first book in the Sekri sequence. I had never heard of this, but it was recommended to me on, I think, Kindle Unlimited, or it might have been like a Facebook ad that I decided to go ahead with, and it was on Kindle Unlimited. But this is a middle grade or younger YA sci-fi story, and it's about this country boy named Sekri Seven Stars, who his family gets kind of forcibly relocated to the city by this corporation called Endrin, and they are supposedly, if I remember correctly, like supposed to be removing a gas resource there. But one day in the city, Sekri ends up getting this email, this mysterious email from an anonymous person asking him to break into the Endrin headquarters to steal these rare or like expensive, valuable worms. And he doesn't know really what this is about, but he has a lot of anger towards the company because of everything that they've done that's impacted his life, you know, losing his home and everything. So he goes ahead and does this, and while he's there, he ends up discovering a young girl. And she is like shaking and obviously scared, but also has no memory of who she is or how she got there. And with basically no other option, he grabs her and they run away and he takes her home with him. And so now, rather than just the anger towards the company about displacing his family and this weird theft of worms, but they're also trying to figure out what this company could possibly be doing that involves another human being. I thought this book was really interesting. I did think at some points it got sidetracked a little bit from the plot, just with the world building and like the city life and stuff. However, I think that's kind of the point, because sometimes it's easy for Sekri to like just let life get in the way of like his anger or his goals when it comes to the more important things. It's easy to just get distracted with, in his case, there's like a video game called Friction that everybody, like all the kids, love right now, and so it's easy for him to just kind of get pulled into day-to-day life and not pay attention to his goals sometimes. And so I do think it was intentional, but it does kind of make the story lag in some points. But it's still fun, and I thought the story, like the actual plot line, was really interesting, and I liked Sekri as a main character. He felt very normal, I guess. Like, his feelings were definitely understandable, and he didn't feel like too whiny like I sometimes feel about some characters in books. So yeah, overall I had a really good experience with it, and I would definitely recommend, if you like sci-fi and you're okay with like the younger end of YA or higher end of middle grade type books, I would definitely recommend checking it out. Next, surprisingly, I went through a little bit of a classics phase. Not too much, but when I was at Books A Million early in the month, I picked up the Books A Million Cranford edition of Pride and Prejudice just on a whim because I thought it looked pretty, and I gave it a shot and I ended up really enjoying myself. That was the second book I read, and I think I really like Jane Austen's character work. I thought the mixture of romance and drama in it was really well done and like well balanced, you know? The only issue I had was sometimes there would be points where things were just kind of like about the societal day-to-day vibe, and it felt like some things weren't really relevant, but it was only a little bit in this book. A couple of her other books that I ended up actually DNFing, like Persuasion and Emma, there was even more scenes where things didn't quite feel like they were part of the plot so much as they were part of the vibes. So That's an issue that I find that I personally have with Jane Austen, but that's not in every book. So it's like I have to check out each book and see how it's going to do for me, I guess. And this one I ended up really enjoying. And the next book I read was also a Jane Austen book. It was Northanger Abbey, I think is what it's called. Yeah, Northanger Abbey. And this one I was really conflicted about because the first half of the book and the later half of the book felt like completely separate books to me. I really, really enjoyed the first half. It probably would have been like a new favorite of mine, like even more than Pride and Prejudice, but the second half really kind of ruined that for me. I got what it was going for with the whole kind of parody-ish of a gothic story, but I don't know. I think maybe I just really enjoy the societal like flirtation and stuff that goes on and maneuverings and like having to tiptoe those lines with like certain friends and things like that. I definitely enjoyed the first half more. I found it more interesting, I guess. But I would say if you're really big into gothics, you might still like this even with the second half. Like you might enjoy that parody of it, but as someone with like not really experience with gothics, it didn't have like a personal effect, I guess. But next I read books 2 and 3 of the Innkeeper Chronicles by Ilona Andrews. That's Sweep in Peace and One Fell Sweep. I like this series all right. I'm not going to go further than book 3. There's only 5 books, so I can't talk, but I could easily just finish the series. But while I was enjoying it, I can tell that it's not going to be a favorite or something that really sticks with me, so I just didn't see a point in continuing. I'm not, like I don't need to know what goes on later in the series. But it's just an urban fantasy series about an innkeeper, which is like someone who has this magical ability and like connection to be like an owner of an inn. And these inns are like sentient, and innkeepers can like hatch them, I guess, like raise them, and they are sentient, and you like they form a bond with them. And basically when they're on their inn grounds, they are crazy strong, like they are the ones in command of that area. But if they leave the grounds, then their magic is like severely weakened. And it just follows some different adventures that our main character goes on, and then there are some common things throughout, like a slowly developing relationship between her and this werewolf dude that has moved into her neighborhood. And then she is also on this years-long journey of searching for her missing parents. I really liked the maturity of our main characters in this series, so I think it was actually that made me want to continue. But the plotline itself, I honestly found a little, I don't know if slow is the right word, but kind of boring for me. And while she did have a goal throughout the 3 books that I read that I suppose we're kind of working towards, it wasn't significant enough to make the plot lines throughout the different books still feel connected. Like it still felt like an episodic type story, and even the commonalities between them wasn't enough to keep me interested in knowing like what goes on in the future books, if that makes sense. It's definitely the most common issue that I have with urban fantasy, and that's the same issue that I ended up having with this next book I read, which is Midlife Bounty Hunter by Shannon Mayer. This is the first book in the 40 Proof series, and it is about a woman who she's in, I think, her early 40s, and after a divorce, she moves to her hometown and ends up applying for a job as like basically a magical bounty hunter. I really liked the humor in this book. I thought it was really funny, but after reading this first book, as soon as I started the second one, I ended up quickly DNFing that one. I think it was called Midlife Fairy Hunter or something like that. And I just quickly got those similar episodic vibes shortly into that second book. So that's why I'm not going further in this series. But the next book that I read is Shadow Black by Sebastian de Castell. This is the second book in the Spellslinger series, and I had a really good time with this series. I don't know why it took me so long to pick up book 2, but even with the first one, I had a really good time with it, and then that feeling has maintained into the second book. So without going into spoilers, just telling you a little bit about what the first book is about. We're following this boy named Kellen, and he is soon going to be taking these tests that children when they turn 16 take to test their magical aptitude, and that kind of decides their societal rankings, because if they do well, then they can become like actual magic users in their community, and if they fail them, then they end up becoming these like servants. Most likely he'd be serving his own family, like household, and if he failed, but that seems likely because his magic is actually fading. But then a woman named Therius Parfax comes into town, and she is what they call an Argosy, and she's very mysterious, but she's a traveler and she carries these cards that can be used as like weapons, and it seems like she may be Kellen's only hope at a real future. This is another series that I think is really witty and funny. I think it's a series that could be enjoyed from like probably 10, 12 to adulthood. But the final book that I read in January is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first book in the Alex Stern series, and I believe this is the first Leigh Bardugo book that I have finished. I enjoyed this, but I don't think I'm going to be continuing with it. I wasn't like in love with it, but I did have a good time. It is a fantasy dark academia book about Yale and the secret societies that it has. And our main girl, Alex, was not like a scholarly kid, but because of her ability to see ghosts, she gets kind of offered the chance to change her future, like make a better life for herself than she was doing. And so she takes that up, and she is now kind of part of a house, Ninth House. They monitor the rituals and stuff of the other houses, make sure everyone is staying in line. But then a girl who does not attend Yale winds up dead on school property, and it becomes kind of like a mystery if this is just innocent bad luck that this happened here, or if it is connected and everything. And so our main character is trying to figure out what's going on, you know? I thought it was all right. I did feel some similar vibes in the writing style between this and Holly Black's Book of Night. Their adult fantasies give off similar feelings to me. I don't know if that's just a me thing or if anyone else felt that way, but that worked for me. Like the writing style worked for me, but I don't know why. I just didn't get hooked enough to want to continue. But those are all of the books that I read in January. Thank you guys so much for watching. Have a great day. Bye.